Hello, everybody. Today I'm sharing with you a game between me and Fritz that I had this morning. It is my first win against an engine. I'm so proud of myself. So basically, what I'm doing is I'm playing an engine every single day until I become world champion. So, the position is the Nimzo Indian, and we get into a pretty crazy line. So I open with D4. Fritz responds with knight f6, c4, e6, knight c3, and bishop b4. And already here, I started to calculate. Not because the position was incredibly complicated, because I know the main line move, which is queen c2. That does good. It controls the e4 square. It stops the knight from coming to e4 to help support an attack on the c3 knight. However, I didn't want to play the main line. I didn't want to play anything that Fritz would be able to predict, or just easily look into the books and find games on. I wanted to confuse. I have a quote on my old chess account on Lichess, which says, one must take the um, uh, engine out of book, uh, the position out of chess, and finally the universe out of God, or something along those lines. So um, I was already thinking I don't want to play Queen C2 because everybody plays that. And earlier today, I was watching a TV show with my girlfriend, and it was about this rich couple that moved into a house. And they started receiving letters like, I'm watching you, and your children's names are so beautiful. And, thank you for bringing me young blood, things like that. And she asked me, what would I do if that was happening to us? And I responded with, if somebody were to send me letters along those lines of I'm watching you or something like that, then I would send them letters back that I'm watching them. And I'd be up all fucking night with binoculars in the windows looking and staring at whoever was coming by straight in their fucking face. And I would watch them back. So transferring that principle over to chess, since Fritz is pinning me, I'm not going to sit by and play queen c2 and just deal with the pin. I'm going to pin Fritz back. So I moved bishop g5, pinning the knight. Now we're both dealing with some pretty intense pins. And if Fritz doesn't do anything, then I'm probably going to push e4. So Fritz gets my bishop. h6, and I don't want to go back. I'm not a pussy. I want to stick with the plan that I've stuck with. So I moved bishop h4. And now Fritz attacks my center, c5, and I protect, e3, pawn takes, and queen a5. Now there's way too much pressure on my c3 knight, so I decide to move queen c2, which takes off some pressure and also adds some control to the e4 square because there's just entirely too much control on the e4 square right now. So I started to do that, and Fritz moves knight e4. I can't take that knight, even though it's not protected, because if I do, then Fritz is going to take my knight, and pawn, once I take back, then the queen will take the pawn, and it'll be forking my king and my rook. So instead, I decided to move rook to c1. And this is a good move because it allows me to kick the bishop later, maybe on my next move, and just alleviate a lot of that pressure, because yeah, I couldn't do it before because my knight was unprotected. If I were to just push a3 and alleviate pressure, then once I took the bishop, the queen would be taking my rook because it's not protected. So a3 really had no kick to it, so it wasn't any point. But now a3 is a serious threat to dismantle this entire attack. Well, first you have to deal with this knight because now that my rook's defended twice, I am threatening to take this knight. Eh, the rook is no longer going to be forked, and it also supports the c3 square. So So I'm sorry, F5 to protect the knight, and I keep some pressure on. So I just keep developing, and I move bishop C3, trying to win a pawn. But Fritz now just takes the knight, and then I take back with C3, and now bishop A3. Um, Now I was thinking here, I don't really want to go for an exchange sacrifice and allow that bishop to take my rook because it just it just loses a lot of squares in the long run. And so I want to move the rook. So I obviously don't want to move it to A1 because that's not only losing squares, but I just don't want to move it back to where I took it from. Um, D1 is good, but it does lose a lot of squares because the squares are being blocked by that pawn, and it does help a pawn push D5 later on, but uh, that pawn push just doesn't really serve me. Um, um, it, uh, it, I mean, I don't want to move my bishop back ever. Um, so it's going to be in the way if I move it to E2 or F1, and so that rook is just going to be kind of useless for a while. But B1 gains a lot of squares, so I decided to move B1, and now G5, bishop G3, and F4. This is when I realized my bishop is trapped, and I was kind of getting discouraged, but then I looked over at Fritz, and Fritz was saying that the position was equal. So I gave it a chance, and I started to look deeper, and I realized that after C5, the bishop is completely stuck. Um, so um, all I need to do is push C5, and the material should be equal. So I moved rook b5 first, just to kick the queen out of there. It's kind of doing too much. It has too much power on the a5 square, and I just want it gone. So uh, Fritz moves queen a6, which is actually a pretty bad mistake. A better move probably would have been to move queen c7 or queen d8, just getting the queen out of there, and then you could continue to develop with c6 and maybe even you know uh, b6 and bishop b7. But Fritz wants to hold on to its material advantage, so it moves queen a6. Uh, all right, so now I move. I want to start. I don't want this bishop to get away, and then I'm losing my bishop, and he's keeping his. So I move c4, c5, also opening up a potential discovered attack on the queen with my bishop. Um, Now knight d6, and this is when I realized now the queen is trapped. It has no squares. So now my target has switched from the bishop on a3 to the queen on a6. So you'll see how I start to attack. First, I want to get all my pieces out. Knight f3. Um, let's see. King d8. Fritz did this because I'm not thinking about doing it now, but maybe later once all the dust is cleared and pieces have been taken off the board, I would like to move bishop g6, which comes with a check and pretty much sends the king into one of these squares. So Fritz just decided to move there anyway. You don't really want to castle kingside because um, it's just I mean, it's really open, and you're kind of. I could take this pawn, and once you do, there's no protection around the king. All right, so Fritz starts just moving towards the queen side to get safe, and I castle, um, and then finally Fritz takes my bishop. And I don't want to give Fritz any tempo moves once I start attacking the queen and the bishop, so I just take back with h3, and now pawn d6, trying to save his bishop by maybe taking and then I take back, or even taking and then taking again, and then allowing the bishop to retreat back on the diagonal. But it's not going to work, So rook b1, and now king c7 to add some protection to the b7 square because I am threatening to just take and have a discovery. But now it actually makes the take even stronger because it comes with a check. So I just go ahead and take. And now the queen trades. And now the rooks and the queen are off the board. And when you look at this position, I mean, you think, wow, like two rooks for a queen, that's absolutely fine. It shouldn't be any disadvantage for black. However, the bishop is still trapped, and I'm going to win it. So two rooks for a queen is normally a fine trade, but two rooks for a queen and a bishop is an absolutely horrible trade, as I'm sure you know. So I start thinking of ways to attack this bishop. If I want to win it as fast as possible, I should probably pull my knight back. Also, g4 is coming, so the knight's already doesn't have a home on the f3 square to begin with, and it needs to find a new place to reside. So I move knight d2 with threats of coming to c4 or b1, attacking the bishop. And now Fritz takes the pawn, and I move to c4, and now Fritz moves the bishop to b4, trying to win a pawn before it loses its piece. So I take, and now knight takes, forking the queen and the bishop. And okay, so I need to move to a new square with my queen, but I need to move to a square that protects this bishop too. So I don't want to move anywhere on the b file because the rook is coming to b8. And once the pieces move, it's just going to be kind of lethal for my queen. I don't really want to move anywhere on c3 or c3 because knight d4 or d5 is gonna just be a tempo kick on that. And I don't want to move anywhere on the d file because it's just very passive, and it also drops the a2 pawn if I move to d1. So I was thinking e2 is probably best. It comes with a tempo on the pawn, and I mean, it threatens the pawn, and it just gains the most squares. It keeps piece connectivity and adds extra exponents on the c4 square. So I move to queen e2. Now Fritz takes, queen takes, and now bishop d5 with an x-ray attack on the a2 pawn. Okay, so trading right now is probably not the best. A queen versus two rooks is fine for Fritz. But a queen versus two rooks when I'm up a pawn is horrible. So I decided to take. And now Fritz moves king up. And at this point, I started to really think very hard. I looked out the window up into the universe and the sky and the stars, and I started thinking, what does it mean to have an advantage philosophically? I proposed a question to Fritz. I asked, do you feel fear? And when you rest and sleep or shut down for maintenance, do you dream of me? I looked at the position and I tried to find a way to make my advantage be felt, not seen on a scoreboard. And I have this quote on my old Lichess account that basically says, how can you play a myth? How can you hold God? Many come to play chess, I come to play God. I don't study theory, I study Christ. One must take the player out of book, the engine out of the library, God out of the universe, and finally, the universe out of God. And as I pondered all these questions and all these philosophical queries, I realized that e5 is an ideal square for my knight. So I moved there with a check and you don't want to move away from the pawn because you'd just be dead lost if you allow me to hold on to that passed pawn. So, I mean, you can't move to b5 or b6 or d6 because of the queen and then the pawn. So you have to take. King takes, and now I move to f7, forking the rook and the pawn, and you can't move to h7 because the queen controls the h7 square. So the rook moves out of the way. And now I'm thinking, the king's kind of high up the board. That's not going to be good for me in the end game. I just would rather the king be further back. So I started pushing the king back. I pushed queen c3, and then now king b6. Um, the king couldn't move to b5 because there would be a nasty fork with knight d6. So king b6 was essentially forced. And now queen b4, pushing the king back into the c7 square. And now I just go ahead and take the h6 pawn. And now the rook attacks. And okay, well, a good thing about pushing the king back is it put me in a perfect position to check it and take material. So I moved queen e7, forcing the king back to b6, again blocking the rook's file, and queen takes g5. And now at this point, I'm feeling very good. I'm up 2 pawns, and positionally, I'm just looking very strong. Even if black does have both of their rooks and I just have a queen. The queen is actually proving to be better in this position because the king is so exposed. So king back to b7, trying to neutralize that very advantage I just said, the king be exposed. Because once the king moves back in, it's a hidey hole on a8, can't be really touched because the bishop is controlling the diagonal. So g4, getting the pawn closer to the endgame. Um, you know, you could call it a pawn or you could call it a queen. It's looking pretty close to promoting right now. So king a8, queen d2, rook d8, threatening a discovery. So I moved. Oh well, actually I attacked the rook. Knight f7, rook f8, and knight e5. Rook d8, king c2, rook c8, queen e2, knight c1, king h2, rook a1, and knight c4 to block the bishop's attack on the pawn, and now the pawn can't really be taken. Rook b1, king pawn g5, rook h8 check, king g3, rook a g8, pawn f4, rook a1, queen b2, attacking the rook, rook e1, knight e5, taking a strong central square, rook b8, attacking the queen, and queen c3, rook e2, attacking the a2 pawn, and then also the g2 pawn. So I decided to block the bishop's view of the g2 pawn and move my knight back to f3. But now I realize that Fritz is probably planning to move rook to b2 and just have some very strong battery on that little line right there from a2 to h2, and that's going to cause problems. But I'm not too worried because positionally I'm still very strong. So rook b2, and now queen c8, forcing the rook back to b8, and now queen c7, and now rook b2 again, and now queen d8, and king b7, and then knight h4, protecting the g2 pawn. You could take it with the bishop, but after um, after it takes, knight takes, rook takes, you have a rook takes, king f3. You're still not looking that great because I'm just controlling so many squares with my queen, and I'm also up a pawn, so I'll probably be promoting rather quickly here. Okay, so that exchange is not gone for. So first take the a2 pawn, and now g6. Okay, now you can no longer take with your bishop because I'm not going to take that bishop back. Really, this pawn is just going to keep walking, and it's going to promote. So I'm actually not even worried about the bishop taking. You have to do something. You don't want to let that pawn promote, and there's no way to get back in time to force it. I mean, you can move here and then pawn g7, and then here and attack the queen, but I'm already promoted by time you get back. So the only good move is to sacrifice the exchange. So rook g2, knight takes g2, rook takes g2, king h3, and finally rook takes pawn. And now black has sacrificed the exchange, and positionally still lost. Actually, probably lost more. But it did get rid of one of my pawns. So, all right. So I move queen e7 to get the king moving and put it in a vulnerable position, maybe for me to start generating some counterplay and utilize my advantage. Okay, so you can't move back, to the file behind the king because I'll just move to queen e8 and fork whatever the rook. All right, so you have to move up. So he did. And now queen d6 check and king b7. And now, as you can see, this pawn, the e6 pawn, is pinned to the rook. So I took advantage of that, and I moved pawn f5, attacking the rook. And now rook h6, king g5, attacking the rook, rook h7, and then pawn takes e6, bishop takes e6, queen takes e6, and now we're in a position where it's a queen versus a rook and a pawn, and positionally, black is just lost. So rook c7, queen b3 check, king c6, king f5, king c5, king e5, a6, queen d5 check, king b6, king d6, rook c8, queen d4, king b7, queen b4 check, king a7, king d7, rook b8, queen c5 check, king a8, queen c6 check, king a7, king c7, and rook b5. Now, if you're into end games, this is pretty interesting to you. But if not, by here I just kind of resigned for Fritz, but not entirely because I knew I could win. Partially because I didn't know how the fuck to win. I have no idea what to do from here. So after this point, I just let Fritz play out the position. I'm just going to play that for you, and just know it's no longer me playing. It's Fritz. Some of the moves might have been me. I might have played out a little bit further past this point, but for the most part, I got here and kind of got lost. So queen e4, rook c5 check, king d6, rook b5, queen d4 check, king a8, king c6, rook b7, queen a4, king a7, queen a5, rook b5, queen c7 check, king a8, queen c8 check, king a7, queen g4, rook b6 check, king d5, king b7, queen c4, rook f6, queen b4 check, rook b6, queen e7 check, king a8, king c5, rook b7, queen e3, rook b5 check, king c6, rook b7, queen a3, king a7, queen c5, king b8, king d6, king a8, queen e3, rook b4, queen f3 check, rook b7, king e5, a5, queen d5, a4, queen d8 check, king a7, queen a5 check, king b8, queen takes a4. And it was in this position that Fritz resigned. I fucking wish. But as you can see now, the position is completely lost. It's a queen versus a rook end game. There's nothing that's gonna be able to be held on to here. There's no draws. It's absolutely lost. And I'll play out the last of the game for you in case you're interested. But thank you so much for watching. Hopefully, I'll have more wins against the engines that I'll be able to share with you. Next time, I'm going for Stockfish's Throat. So, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and a comment. And thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.